Welcome back to the Republic Commando armor build. This is part 3 and today we're actually tackling the armor pieces themselves. So for this bit I'm actually going to be focusing on the rest of the parts that needed seaming, similar to the way we did the backpack. So as you can see, I've got a few pieces laid out here. So we've got things like the forearms, we've got the greaves, we've got the thighs, and I've also got the bicep pieces just off camera. So all of these will need to be trimmed down, sanded, and then we need to do what is essentially a butt join and put the sides together like that, reinforce all the insides, and probably do a little bit of tweaking because I'm not the size of a Republic Commando. I'm smaller, so we're going to have to just figure out bits that if I need to just like take a bit more off than normal just to make it a little bit smaller, or what areas will benefit from just extra padding on the inside over actually taking away some of the plastic. Hopefully won't make any massive errors, fingers crossed. So what we're going to do first is some of these, which are some nice heavy duty scissors. As you can see, a lot of this is just raw off the actual vacuum former, so we've got all the edges on here that need to be taken off. So we're just going to go through and cut off some of the edges so we've got a nice flat side here. Try and do it as neat as we can, and then we're going to sand the bits down, just try and flatten it out and see if we can line them up as neatly as we can, because the neater you do this stage means you don't really have to try and fill around with filler a lot more. So I'm going to start off with the thighs because I know there's not going to be a huge amount of tweaking to do to get these to fit me. There's a bit of room in here, but they should fit me fine. Right, so we've put all our halves together. It's just one of each to sort of show you what we've done. The best one that's gone together is actually the thighs that went together really nicely. So just to figure out sort of where to cut it, it just purely went by eye on that. I haven't fully trimmed the bicep, so just to show you, you can see where the mould edge sort of finishes. You kind of got this sort of rough texture here, so this bit will be cut out because this isn't part of the armour shape. It's just excess of what you have when you put it on the vacuum former. So I just went by to see where the flat, nice smooth edge was, and then just sort of cut away at that bit. For stuff like the biceps, I have cut away a little bit more than just the rough edge, purely because I just need a little bit less space in here. Not a huge amount because I don't want to ruin the shape and the overall look of the armour, but just enough that I don't have to put an enormous amount of padding in there, just a bit more padding than usual. So yeah, the biceps are all done. I used the same methods I did for the backpack, where for like sort of these little ridges, instead of just using plastic, I've gone and used the gauze in the corners. That's just hot glued in place. But for the rest of them, it's pretty much just a straight seam using the spare plastic that has been given. Again, all just glued together with super glue. That's what the instructions say to do, and this stuff actually goes really well together with super glue. One thing I haven't trimmed is like these edge pieces, which is what I'm going to do now, because obviously I don't know where the shape's going to be when I stick these together, because they don't go together perfectly. You still have to trim and clean it up. So best example is on the legs. You can see there's a sort of a big overhang on this side. See, and same on that side. Obviously all these bits need to be sanded and filled in, and we cut out a little bit of the knee because this bit curves around and does dig in. So I don't want that one there. And again, I just need to line up sort of the edges on the forearms and stuff here. So now it's just a case of clean up for this. So get it ready for the stages of painting, but we're not going to do the painting. We'll move on to the next armour pieces, because I want to do the painting when everything's done and I've done all the sizing and done all the strapping and I know everything fits. Painting is the last thing I want to do. Don't want to paint it and then realise, oh, I need to take a little bit more out here for it to be comfortable to wear. And then I ruined my paint job by having to cut a bit of plastic off again. So now is the time just for trimming everything. So I'm going to go do all the edges, just mark out where I want to cut stuff, get my Dremel out and be very careful and just start grinding away at some of the edges. And then we're going to start getting some filler and filling in these gaps. Probably just have to sand some of these down first, because again, they don't line up perfectly. Like this side sits a little bit higher than this one. this is pretty much at the moment a rinse and repeat of what we did with the backpack, so at least I know what I'm doing, so it shouldn't take too long to get through all of these now. Everything is now at this stage, which is its preliminary filler and sanding stage, so the first layer of filler has gone in. So what I'm going to do now is just clean off some of the dust and just spray just this bit. I'm not priming the whole thing, just going to use some plastic primer. Just so I can see, like, clearly from just using my eye here, I can see there's bits like there, this bit here, that's going to need some more filler, but having it all one colour means you can see definite if there's any other sort of little areas. That's gonna just need a little bit of extra work. So then everything is going to get a second round of filler. Some bits will need milliput, like the bits where sort of the internal bit of plastic hasn't gone quite all the way to the edge, so filler won't really want to hold itself there, so just need some milliput just to fill in the edges so it's a bit stronger. Then it'll just be a case of rinse and repeat until we get it all nice and smooth and the seam is pretty much invisible. Okay, so just waiting for all the filler to dry and all these bits. So I got Miller put on some of the edges, like I said, so that takes longer to dry than the filler. So whilst that's doing its thing, I'm just looking at these, which are the knee plates, and just figuring out where to cut them. So I've got a few reference images on my phone. As you can see, I didn't cut out all of the indent in the front. I've actually left a little bit. I cut out a lot because of where it sits. It's kind of high up on the knee, and with that bit still there, it did dig in a little bit. But you need this just for the actual knee plate to sit in. So the actual height of the knee plate seems like it would sit kind of flush with the actual shape of the leg. So you don't have to cut off a huge amount, but just enough. And you don't have to worry about filling in this top bit, because that's all going to be cut off where the pattern ends. So now the knees are cut out, and just put them to one side, just super glued the little crack with a bit of mesh and added some hot glue in there as well, just to make sure that crack is nice and sealed. Now taking a look at the hand plates. Now these hand plates are absolutely massive on me. Like, I've got little hands, and I know this is costume for bigger people, but this is just that little bit too big. So what I've opted to do is I've marked out just a centimetre's width down the middle here of both the hand plates. I'm literally just going to cut out a chunk of them and then just glue it together, so the width is lessened a little bit, and that should hopefully just make it so it's a little bit sort of better for me to wear it. Obviously it means that this hand plate detail on the back is not going to be correct, because this bit is now going to be a lot thinner, but honestly I'd rather that one detail be slightly incorrect than having this massive thing on my hand that just, yeah, it's supposed to sit, what, it's supposed to sit here, and look at that, I can't. Look, my thumb's under here, that's going to be useless. A lot of trimming. I may need to actually get rid of this line as well, even though that does look, from the images I've seen, like it is part of the hand plate. But we'll see, because yeah, at the moment it's not a great sizing for me, so we're just going to get the Dremel, cut it apart very gently. Now, between doing the seaming for the legs and the arm pieces, I've been trimming some other bits up. So these are the shoulder bells. So they've got a nice sort of outline shape to them now. This side's the upper bit, and in here is where one of the resin pieces go. But before we do that, we've got to put a back to them. Now, they have kindly traced out a little sort of bit of plastic on a spare bit that comes with the suit. I don't know if you can see that on camera, there is a little pencil line around here. So essentially those attach to the inside of this sort of shoulder bell bit. So it sits on top of the shoulder rather than, you know, sitting flat over like that, so it sort of gives you more height on these. So what we're going to do is just cut these out, and we're going to quickly glue them in place and clean up the edges if need be. Everything is seamed, everything is trimmed, so it didn't show you trimming like all of it because it's pretty much the same thing, just going around cutting off the edges, sanding it. The only thing that needed a bit more filler was this back piece, so obviously done the same thing that we've done with the rest of the relief cuts. Reinforced it with some extra plastic, put a load of glue in there, make sure that's not going anywhere, sanded that down, added some filler, sanded that down, so that's all nice and neat now. So yeah, everything is pretty much sorted. I haven't done that yet, but I don't want to do that until I get the chest ready. But everything is all sanded down, cut out, pretty much ready to go. So we've now got to work on the strapping system. Now I will be going by the guide that they've done in the instruction manual, but I'll also be changing some bits up and strapping it in a similar way to TK armour, because I know that works, and I've got to be able to get it to fit to my body and make sure things are comfortable and don't move. And I've also got to pad certain things so things are going to sit differently. So this is the kind of stage of we've now got to get everything to look right on a person. So first thing I'm going to start off with is I'm going to get these shin pieces and bring them over here, because I've got these really chunky white shoes. These have got really chunky soles to them, purely because I need that extra little bit of height in this costume. So I bought some trainers that have got some extra height. This costume does come with shoelace covers, which I had no idea what these bits were, so I had to message a fellow Commando top hat, and they were like, oh yeah, by the way, that's your shoelace covers. So I was like, oh cool. So they go over there. But we got to make sure that this fits nicely on top of here, and if need be we can cut bits off and stuff like that. It's got some nice little sort of detail on here as well. These will be pretty much covered in red paint anyway, so it's just good that it's a white base. And then after we do that, we've got to do the stomach plate and the back plate, because that's what the thighs are going to attach to, and that's what the knee plate's going to attach to, so can't really do anything else until that big bit's done. But we're going to do this first, just so all the boots are sorted. Okay, so I've been tweaking the stomach plate and the chest and back. So what I've chosen to do for the strapping for this, a lot of the strapping in the instruction manuals just have it all permanently glued together, and I wanted to make all my straps and stuff detachable. So basically just for ease of packing, things like that. So for the chest piece, so you see we got the front and the back together here. To join the top two bits together, I've literally just got a piece of webbing, so it's a non-stretchy material because I'm going to be using elastic for the rest of it, and just sewn on some Velcro on either side of the webbing, and put a bit of the other side of the Velcro on the underside of the strap, so that just holds it together really nicely. I've also glued in a little bit of padding in there just for now, because when I was test fitting it, it wasn't sitting very well. So a little bit of padding just helping there. And also just decided to Velcro the side seams as well. So you can see just on the inside here, I actually glued in an extra piece of plastic on the back piece, and put some Velcro on that. So there is a slight overlap on the front, but it keeps together nicely. And just to make sure that with that slight overlap it doesn't catch, I've also put a little bit of foam across the bottom, which is glued in on one side and Velcroed in place on the other, because obviously you still want to be able to open and shut the chest seam on the side. Now for the stomach, it's got a couple of different sections in it. Again, in the instructions, wasn't entirely clear. It did get to a point where in the instructions they stopped explaining it and they went, just look at the picture. And the picture isn't very clear, so I have shrunk the waist down a fair bit, obviously, to get it to fit on me, so it's not just completely falling apart and moving around, and also that it's small enough it comfortably fits underneath the chest piece, of where I've cut that down a little bit as well to make sure it still moves, but it's not too small that it looks out of place. Again, a lot of messing around trying to figure out what to do. Seam wise, I just ended up going for something really nice and simple, because then the overlap kept catching and I didn't like sort of how it looked. So what I've done on the inside here is, this is just one separate strip of plastic that isn't glued in, it's Velcro to both sides, so I can remove it, and if I need to modify it then it's not a big deal, so it's completely removable, and if I want to change the seam at any point I can, but this works for now. But it's Velcroed in on both sides, and it's the same on the other side as well. So you do have a little bit of a seam down this side, but it's not hugely noticeable, and you don't have an overlap, so things don't catch. Again, the butt plate I've done differently to what they've done on the instructions, because again it wasn't hugely clear of how they've done it with the belt. So what I've done is I've just kind of glued the butt and the belt together, so that's all one piece and it sits separately from the actual back. These little side panels are really awkward. They were a lot longer. I cut a bit off. I'm really not entirely sure what you're meant to do with them, because they said about you gotta like heat stuff up to make the belt and form things around it, and honestly it just, things weren't looking right. I'm really not sure what was going on around there. Again, the instructions didn't make it clear. I'm not someone who works very well by just written instructions. I'm a visual learner, so for me I just had to kind of wing this on my own terms. So if I just take off the ab piece, which is just Velcroed on several places, heavy duty Velcro is really tough to pop off. So there's all the Velcro attachments for the ab plate. I've added a little bit of plastic just in that top bit there, just to help fill out that gap so it sticks a lot better. So you can see it's Velcroed on both sides here. Let me take off one side to show you. So the whole of the butt plate is in one piece. So just Velcro it at the bottom of the ab plate and it all stays on. So this is not going to be a costume I'm going to be sitting down in, because obviously this is now quite firm. I don't want that to break. But given my height and stature, this is not a costume I'm going to have much movement in. This isn't like my TK where I can sit down, lie down, kneel down. This is going to be very restrictive, so I just have to be very aware of that. So what I'm going to do next is a strapping system that holds this onto my shoulders, even though it fits all right, because obviously I've made it that little bit smaller, so it's a nice snug fit, but womanly hips keeps it up, but just to make sure it's not going anywhere. Still need them shoulder straps, because this is the main support for the legs to go off of as well. So I'm going to be doing pretty much the same strapping system I've done in the past for my TKs. So if you've seen any of my Stormtrooper builds, you probably will be familiar with what I'm going to do, and if you own a Stormtrooper kit, you're probably familiar with this strapping as well. So I'm not going to do what the instructions say, but you know, this should work well, and in my experience, if you have straps that don't have any give in them, the armour just tends to want to pull itself apart because, well, there's no give, so your attachments come apart quicker than anything else, and then your armour breaks, and no one wants that. And I have to make sure things fit around me because I'm smaller, so I know things are going to move in a way they probably don't want to, but I'm just going with what I know works. So here I just got a spare strip of plastic and just marked out a couple of sections. So as I said, if you see my previous builds, you know what I'm going to be doing. But I've got my trusty heavy duty push fasteners set. So basically the premise is you cut out a little strip of this plastic, you drill a hole in it, and you attach one side of the push fastener through that hole. You attach the other side to your strip of elastic that is already cut to length to where you want it to go. And then you glue that section with the plastic in the armour, and that's what the elastic strap connects to. So nice and simple. The only difference with the shoulder straps is I do have these which are Del ring clips. So these are adjustable little clips like that. Again, just helps when you're trooping. It's not necessary, I just like having adjustable clips, so if things tend to pull on the armour a little bit more. Again, with the TK, it depends on how your belt's attached. If you've got holster with a gun in it, or if you've got it unholstered. Not that there's any holsters with this, but you know, if things might change, if I add more padding here and I need to adjust the straps, and it's nice and easy to have a clip rather than remake an entire strap. So pretty much all the other strapping that I'm going to do will be revolving around this method, and once it's all done, obviously I'll show you exactly what I've done and where I've attached bits. So a lot of rinse and repeat later, a lot of remaking straps. I think the strapping is finally done. So I'm going to take you through Everything I've done, we're going to work from the bottom and all the way up so you guys can see a little bit more closely how each piece looks and what I've done for the strapping of each piece. So starting off, we've got the shoes. So these, again, it also depends on kind of what you want for yourself. These are shoes I just got off eBay. These are chunky soles purely because I wanted a little bit more height with this character. As you can expect, every time I go to Comic-Con, there's always one person that comes up to me and goes, "Aren't you too short for a stormtrooper?" And having heard that for 10 years on repeat does kind of grind your gears a little bit. So a little bit of height with this one. These shoes also have this kind of like sort of nice sort of stitching on it and a little strap that goes over. Kind of looks like it would belong on a clone trooper, obviously minus the big soles. And the ankle high boots, and these ones have got a small enough ankle that they fit really nicely under the Shin armour. I think Wicked Armour just recommend like tennis shoes or chunky tennis shoes. You can get proper clone trooper boots if you look online, but obviously if you go for proper ones, they're quite expensive. So these are cheap, cheerful, they do the job well. So yeah, these are shoelace covers, so it's just glued on with some heavy duty Velcro, which is always a bit of a nightmare to get off. So just try and avoid going on top of the laces too much. This one has, so make sure the laces are loose enough you can get your shoe in, just in case. Again, all depends on what shape and size your shoe is, so just heavy duty Velcro goes on the top, so it stops the laces being shown. I'll put the strap over this as well. Again, that will stop it from moving, and it means the Shin will rub on that bit and not so much on here, because you can see I've just done a little bit of plastic primer and it's already taken some of the primer off from the rubbing, but well, that'll be natural weathering, and obviously none of this is probably painted yet. So those are the shoes, nice and easy. Moving on up, so we've got the shins. So this is kind of how the shins actually look, how I've cut the top portion out. I haven't actually had to scallop out the back. I thought I might have to go down like I've done with my TK, take out more of the back of the knee, but the way that the legs are, they actually have a fair bit of movement in them, so I didn't need to cut any extra bits out. You can see this is what the bottom bit, sort of how I've cut that bit. And of course, all the sides filled in. You can see there's just some primer on there just so I could see if there was any other bits that needed filling. But that's a nice smooth seam now, so when that's painted that should be pretty much invisible. And also the knee plate is now on, so I was wondering how to do the knee plate. Didn't want to permanently attach it, and there's because I cut off a bit of the top of the knee so it doesn't rub into my knee, because again I struggle a little bit with height in this. I took out a little bit at the top so it wasn't enough plastic to permanently attach it anyway. But what I've gone and done is on the inside here you can just see these are bits of webbing, so I've not used elastic, I've just used webbing, and there's heavy duty Velcro at the top here and at the bottom here, so all these straps come off. This is actually webbing, I've double layered so the webbing is really stiff, and I've just made sure it's really nice and tight and it's got no give to it. So I can take it off, I can take the knee plate off, especially for travel if I'm using a case that maybe isn't long enough, then I can get the knee plate in, because obviously I don't want that to smash or crack, because it is quite thin plastic. So again, it's heavy duty, so it's a bit difficult to get off, so I won't do it now. But yeah, you can just take the straps off, take the knee plate straight off, and you can see there's also a little bit of padding in here as well. So I've just stuck a couple of bits of this is just upholstery foam. If you've got somewhere that does like repairs for sofas and stuff like that, I actually get mine at a local carpet store. You can get it online as well. It stuff's pretty cheap, it's nice and soft, it glues well, and this is just helping it push forward a little bit more on my leg so the back end isn't sticking out so much. Just helps it sit a lot nicer, and will also help a little bit with movement. And at the top of the knee here I've also added this little strip of EVA foam, because one thing I noticed when doing the test fits was this was rubbing against the leg. Normally wouldn't be too much of a problem, probably will start taking the paint off obviously the more you troop with it, but the main issue was it was making one hell of a squeaky noise. It was really horrible. So it's just sticking out a little bit further, like the tiniest bit out from where the actual plastic is, and at a slight angle as well. So this is the bit that touches the knee plate and not the plastic, so you're not actually going to get that horrible rubbing sound. And moving on up, we've got the thighs, again the same as the shins. Got the seam down two sides. Just turn this around so you can kind of see how I've cut it, sort of where the lines are. You know, I've pretty much stuck to sort of where the clean edges start on the vacuum form piece. I haven't had to cut much extra out. So I think these pieces were the easiest to actually put together. And on the inside here you can see I've got one of the little poppers backed on plastic in there, and also on the inside I've stuck a couple bits more of that upholstery foam again, so it just sits outwards from the leg a little bit, makes it more comfortable, and it just looks better when it's sitting correctly, because remember, everything is made to one size, but everybody's bodies are different. So where I've had to put padding, you guys might not. You might have to put it somewhere else. You might have to cut a bit more extra, you might not. It all depends on your body and how the armour fits you. It's never a perfect sort of plan how I do mine. It's just a case of how it fits and how comfortable it is on me. So moving up to the middle, we've got obviously the stomach, the back plate, the cod, and the butt plate. You see that the cod piece isn't on properly because the edge of the belt's sticking out. Obviously you've got the straps on the inside as well, again attached mainly with poppers. Now these are elastic, so they're just a little bit more comfortable up on the shoulders. So the front part has just got one side of a dell ring clip on it, and the back part has the other side which is adjustable, so when I put it on I can make sure it's adjusted, it's nice and tight, it fits well. What also is a thing I normally do, especially when I'm wearing my TKI armour, is when it's on and it's in the position I want it, I just get a little bit of duct tape and I just wrap it around the top section here just to make sure it doesn't come undone when I'm trooping, because I've learned on long troops, especially if you're doing a lot of marching, it will slowly work its way out over time, and then your straps will just ping off, which is never good, because this is the support system for obviously the stomach and also the legs, because the second poppers that the legs attached to are just on the inside there. Down here we've also got the forearms and the elbows. Now the forearms are the ones that I've put the most amount of padding in. We're going to start off with the elbow attachment actually, so this is just how I've cut out the elbow piece, so you can just sort of see what shape I've gone for. So the elbow piece is mainly attached the same way as the knee, so you've got two strips of webbing that are velcroed on the inside here and velcroed on the inside of the elbow. So this is only one strip, I've not doubled up with the webbing, so it's got a bit more movement to it, because you will need that, 'cause this will hit against the bicep armour, so it will need to move to accommodate that. And there's also an extra bit of padding that I've added in this bottom bit, just because that is where my actual elbow sits, and it just needs that extra bit just to help it sit in a better position and move a lot nicer. So that's just a strip of EVA foam that I've just glued to the straps themselves, so I can fully remove the strapping and the padding from here, because I will need to remove most of this when I get round to painting. And also there's a strip of velcro with some elastic there, so that goes obviously over your elbow joint, so it holds it close to your arm so it's not just flapping in the wind kind of. And then we've also got the forearm piece itself. Now I couldn't shrink this down as much as I'd like to make it comfortable, purely because you've got these pieces, which is something I'm going to stick on later, I'm not going to stick on now. And these actually go on the side, so they obviously need to sit in the correct position and sort of line up a little bit with here. You can see it doesn't line up perfectly because I've taken out some of the actual width of the forearm, but it's enough that it still looks like it belongs there. But we'll get around to that when we do the actual painting, which will be in the next episode. And just to make sure this sits on my arm properly, at the front I've got a load of upholstery foam. As you can see, the stuff is grey because this stuff is going to be on show more. So I just had some of this left over from when I did the muscle suit, so it's a couple of strips just layered up in there. And also, just because of the way the armour sits, it leaves a really big gap between me and the actual armour itself. Wicked Armour does recommend, if you've got a muscle suit or can get a muscle suit, to use that to help pad it out underneath, but I don't want to be wearing a lot of layers with this, because when you're inside, this suit can get, well, any armour suit can get really, really hot really quickly. Outside, you can cool down quite quickly, but again, having less layers just kind of helps. So what I've just gone and done is added a strip of EVA foam to the inside. Again, not all the way around, just there. So it just kind of builds it up, make it look like it's a little bit thicker. So when you put it on, just slide it under here, put your arm through, and it fits really nice and snugly, and that's not going to go anywhere. Then moving up, we got the bicep pieces. Now you can see this has got also a lot of padding in it. I put the padding mainly towards the front where the actual bicep is, because I don't have the biceps to fill this out. So this makes this sit a little bit more forward, so it makes it look a little bit more like you have the muscles, and also means with it sitting forward that it doesn't clash with the elbow too much. So the elbow will sit up here, because when I did some test fits without any padding, this would be moving around and then the elbow would get caught and go underneath, which is not something you want. So bringing it forward helps eliminate that problem. There's a little bit of padding around the back as well, just so I'm not like completely flat back of the armour. And again, just to help bulk it out a little bit, you've got the EVA foam strips around the top inside. So this is the bit that faces towards my body, and also the bottom parts of it. It just helps the armour look a little bit thicker, especially when, you know, you physically can't fill out the space in there. Because I have made this smaller, but not small enough that it would look weird against the other size of the armour, especially the size of the pauldron. Speaking of the pauldron, we also have one of the popper attachments on the inside here that attaches to the strap that helps attach it to the pauldron. And also just here's a good look for you to see how much I've cut away for mine and where bits have been cut, just so it's nice and clear. And here are the pauldrons. They do have another piece that goes on the inside here, which is this nice little resin cast. Can't remember which way it goes around at the moment. I think it's something like that. It just sits on the inside there. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to paint these separately or if I'm going to glue it in and paint it all together. We'll find out in the next episode. And here we've got one of the straps that connects it to the costume. Now, one of these actual poppers I found didn't like a lot when you did sort of high movement, so moving your arm from like a position down by your side, or even like sort of at an angle straight up, would cause this one to come off, because it's actually got a double popper, which means that when it's on something it doesn't swing, because if it's just on one popper it will tend to want to rotate, and also it just holds it down a little bit closer to the armour. So I've just super glued that popper in place. So it's a lot of trial and error, because of the way that they've done it. It's not entirely clear on the instructions because they use some old pictures but detail new methods that they've done. I just really wanted to simplify it so I didn't have like a bunch of different straps just for one piece. So this holds it on fairly nicely, and this popper sticks to the popper that's on the strap underneath the shoulder. So it sits on there like that, and then we've got another strap that attaches onto here that then also attaches onto the inside of the bicep. So that kind of makes it all in one piece, because there is not a huge amount of movement to that, but I don't really need the movement for there. And here we've got the final piece, which is the neck ring, which also sits halfway down your chest, so it's a big part of the chest armour as well. Not a lot of this needed trimming, it was just the edges that needed a bit of neatening up and rounding off at the corners, just to make sure, you know, don't accidentally stab myself when trying to put this on. Just cut away at the hole, made it a little bit bigger so it sits on an actual neck ring nicely. So it's a really simple way of connecting it. So when you put it on, all you got to do is just overlap the back, and that's on a Velcro attachment there, so that won't go anywhere. And to make sure that it sits nicely inside the actual chest armour, on the back here, got an elastic strap that is Velcroed in place to the back of the neck ring, and that you can Velcro in place to the underside. You can just see it, if I turn that around, there is the little Velcro attachment. That will go to there, so that means, obviously I've just put that there, but that'll go under the armour. When you're moving, it shouldn't pop out. It might need a couple of extra ones on each side, but again, I'm not entirely sure until I actually wear it and start doing proper movement. So with that being said, let's do our first full test fit with all the strapping and all the padding, and let's see how this looks. So with how chunky that armour is, it's really, really awkward to put it on by yourself. And I'm going to have to change up a couple of the straps that I've already done. I think I might go back to doing actually elastic straps for the legs because those did not want to stay on. So once I get some more push fasteners, I'll do that. And yeah, probably do the same just for the biceps as well. And I've actually gone ahead and attached the shoulder bells to the strap underneath the chest to stop that bit from popping off. Again, it's a lot of trial and error, but I think we're pretty much there now. All I gotta do is just quickly remake those straps, which is like a 5-minute job. And then obviously the resin bits that I mentioned before, decide if I'm going to paint them separately or stick them on. And obviously you notice I wasn't wearing the hand plates because all I got to do is sew on a bit of Velcro to the back of the hands and put the other half Velcro on the inside of the hand plate, so they're just going to go stick straight on. That's the same thing I do with my TK. And obviously the backpack's not attached to this as well, so when it's all done, figure out how high to put the backpack on, because obviously that's going to be a little bit easier if you have someone else there. And yeah, that'll be pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to get this thing prepped for paint, and everything else will be done in the next episode, and the episode afterwards probably be tackling actually making all the separate sort of unique parts of Seb's armour that don't come with the kit. So I know this one has taken a while to come out, but it has really been a lot of trial and error in getting this right. This is a lot more difficult than putting together a set of TK armour, and one of my friends is currently doing this exact same set of armour as well, so we're both talking about it to each other, and he also agrees that this set is really tricky to put together, and he's got more of a challenge because he has to get his approved by the 501st. So as always guys, thank you very much for watching, thank you very much for your patience. I know you guys have been waiting for this episode for a while, but we've got all the tricky bits pretty much done now, so now we can move on to the fun bits, which is painting, because I'm really looking forward to getting this all looking like Seb's armour. Special thanks as always has got to go out to my supporters on Patreon, especially to Jeff Kenny, who's pledged to have his name shouted out on my videos. If you want to go support me on Patreon, links as always are at the end of the video and in the description below. It means that maybe one day I'll get to do this as a full-time job rather than having a day job. So maybe if you want it, you don't have to. Again, just watching the videos, sharing it all among your friends, that all helps too. So as I said, next episode is paint and doing some tweaks, so I'll see you then. We've also got a couple of other cool things coming out on this channel, so keep your eyes peeled, and I'll see you in the next episode of whatever I put up next. So take care, and as always, may the force be with you.